Everyone, welcome back to the Whirling Circles Internal Martial Arts Podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Garcia, joined by Frank Allen and John Molinaire. How you guys feeling?
Good.
Fine.
Awesome. We've recorded a couple great episodes together, and so we got a couple of them lined up. But we wanted to actually record a specific episode that's a little bit more time sensitive, and that's what we're going to be doing today. And there's a lot to talk about, so we were actually having a lot of conversation offline before we started recording, and I was like, wait, let me press the record button so we could get right into it. Yeah, hopefully we can keep this under an hour. We'll see how we go with the conversation. But there's a lot to go over. We're going to be doing one of our favorite kind of shows to do. It's our second time doing it, but we're going to be doing one of our kind of fight predictions or fight analysis prior to the event. The UFC event that's coming up, 259, that's going to be happening on March 6th, Saturday, March 6th. Where's it happening, Frank? Is it in Fight Island?
No, they're done with Fight Island for a while.
Yeah.
Abu Dhabi has just been blasted with COVID. They were there because it didn't have any, and all of a sudden, wham! It's blasted. So everything for a while is going to be at their own arena in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Which they don't mention much, but that's the arena that they built to do their own shows, their Ultimate Fighter shows. It's theirs. That's why they can do what they want there.
Awesome.
But all the shows are going to be there for a while. Although, of course, Dana's going, I think he said by May, I'm going to be in Los Angeles, I'm going to be in Florida, whatever, Dana. They were going to buy a special island that was going to look like Hans Island and Enter the Dragon, too, and they ended up this resort in Abu Dhabi. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to what Dana says, mostly. He was going to bring back Khabib. That's never going to happen.
Yeah. Well, so it's a pretty major event. There's gonna be 3 titles on the line. It's a really, really heavy card, probably their biggest card of the year after the whole McGregor card. But yeah, so we wanted to get into it. But before we get into UFC 259, we just had a pretty cool weekend of fights that I wanted to pick your brains about. But of course, we had just this past weekend UFC Fight Night, the Blades versus Lewis fight, and there was some other good fights, but the Blade versus Lewis was pretty significant. But I really want to talk about Oscar Valdez and what he did. Did you see the Oscar Valdez fight, Frank?
No.
Oh my God! I forgot to send the link around to you guys before this. Amazing knockout for the junior lightweight title, WBC junior lightweight title this weekend. It was the same night as UFC Fight Night, and it was streamed on ESPN, and it was just like massive. So maybe we won't talk about that show because I haven't seen it. I could just mention it, but we should definitely do a follow up on that and who Oscar Valdez is. But what do you think of the performance by Lewis?
Well, it's great. It's Razor Blades versus the Black Beast. So it certainly was titled really nicely. But it was really pretty interesting because Lewis actually came in and he didn't look good. And the first round, his timing was off. He was slow. He was sloppy. And Blades was owning him. And the second round started off the same way. And then Blades went in for a takedown slightly sloppy. And Derek caught him with an uppercut. And he was out cold. And the referee was out of position. And, of course, you're supposed to keep going until the referee pulls you off. So Derek nailed him twice more while he was on the ground and already out cold. Took him like at least 5 minutes to wake him up. He was done. But then afterwards, Derek in his post-fight interviews is usually rambunctious and funny and saying stuff. When they asked him about it, he actually, I understand later with the post interview, he got it together. But right after the fight, he was like, no, I didn't feel right. Because I didn't feel right in the dressing room. I didn't feel right in the cage. It was not a good night. I didn't feel right. And they said, well, you knocked him out with that uppercut when he went for a takedown. He says, yeah, well, we practiced that a lot. in the training for this, i.e., it was on automatic. The guy put himself right where he had trained over and over again. And of course, Derek's one of those guys that just has to get a slight piece of you. Him and Nagano are out there as the number one punches. They can hit you a glancing blow and you're done. And Curtis stuck his head in there and bang, caught the uppercut and was done. But he was they said, what do you want from this after this fight? And he said, well, after this one, I'm certainly not ready for a title fight. I don't know. He was admitting that he felt bad and the whole thing, but, he's got that power. But it wasn't the usual Derek with all the funny comments about his wife and his underwear and whatever. He's usually hilarious. And he was very, very subdued and almost apologetic at his performance when he had just knocked this guy cold for 5 minutes. It's like it was quite interesting. A different view of Derek Lewis. He's a good man. He's a really good man.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. If you don't follow him on Instagram and Twitter, it's hilarious. But he the most notable, he was ranked number 4 going into the fight. Blades was ranked number 2. So there's going to be obviously an adjusting to the rankings because of that win. But also, too, he joins Belfort as with 12 knockouts as the most knockouts in UFC history. So, that's a pretty big win on many levels for him. I agree with you, Frank. He said it. He just didn't look like he was in sync. He was kind of being owned and dominated a little bit. There was more connections happening, but it didn't seem like he had a game plan. He even said that he wasn't trying to punch that much, that he was kind of just waiting to execute one of the plans, and one of them was, on the defense, on the takedown, throwing that uppercut. And man, he just, Blades was out cold, went down limp, straight body, straight leg, shaking out. It was a pretty massive
ate those
knockout.
2 right hands after he was down there. That first right hand after he was down is lucky it didn't take his head right off. It was amazing. And I don't care for Blades much, and I really like the Black Beast, so I was really happy. Really happy. Blades has too much of a tendency to be a lay and pray wrestler. And those have always bored all of us that really like fights. And he started punching a little, and apparently he got a little carried away with his punching ability, and they went in for a sloppy takedown attempt. I mean, that's why he got caught.
Really sloppy, yeah.
And what was he doing with his head sitting on Derek's waist? It was just begging for it.
Did either of you?
But Derek's one of those guys. Get a slight piece of you, and it's all over. I'd love to see him and Nagano fight again. Obviously, the last time they were like too much respect for each other, and they danced around for 30 minutes and looked at each other. And I think Derek got that decision, which means if Nagano wins, they'll want him to fight Jones, but I bet he's going to want to fight Derek.
You want to say something, John?
Just, was this the outcome each of you were expecting? Because from everything I had heard, Blades was kind of favored and expected, like the wrestling is so dominant that they were really expecting that to be the deciding factor. I didn't see the fight. I did read about it though. So
yeah, Blades was heavily favored, and Derek has trouble with wrestling, so I didn't know what to expect because it's obviously one of those things that more than likely I figured Blades was going to wrestle him and win a boring full distance decision, but you never know because if Derek gets a slight piece, and he did, tout fini.
Yeah, I think so. I think he even said it in like his pre-fight. He's always doing these like funny pre-fight interviews where he's like, I'm not gonna box with this guy. I'm not a good boxer anymore. I'm gonna definitely go into grapple. And this Lewis says this stuff like as a joke. Like he's like, obviously my game plan is I'm gonna knock this out, but I'm gonna humor y'all with this conversation. So there was a lot of that joking going into it, but I think I was going for Lewis. I think Lewis is a little bit underrated. I really love how he, obviously not underrated in the sense that he's a knockout king at this point, but that he actually has a lot of fight intelligence. I think people think that he's just a brawler, but he made this crazy transformation physically and also I think stylistically over the past 2 years. Lost a lot of weight, put on a lot of muscle, and just started becoming such a more dynamic fighter after he got that knee injury. He still has a lot of stuff going on in his knees. I wish he would come to me for personal training because I'm like, oh, I could fix this knee thing you got going on. But you know, he was like doing in his last fight, jumping, flying knees and stuff like that. Like you don't see that stuff too often from a guy who's known as a heavyweight slugger, you know.
Yeah, he
So
had
I'm
back
looking at
problems before.
yeah.
He had terrible back problems, and theoretically that's been cured.
So I looked up the rankings, and he's moved Lewis. They've officially updated it. Lewis has moved into number 2 in the heavyweight division. Presumably, if John Jones gets in the mix, that might be adjusted. But number 2 currently, behind Nagano, and Blades moves into number 3. I think he should have went further down in the rankings, but he just got bumped down one slot. But Lewis is now the number 2 heavyweight contender.
Yeah, unfortunately, if Jones can come in without any ranking at all because he's never fought heavyweight, so he'll have no ranking, and they'll give him the title shot anyway because he's one of Dana's favorites. Him and
Yeah,
Conor
it's like
McGregor.
McGregor. Yeah.
If you're one of Dana's favorites, you can get anything you want, and he's another one of Dana's favorites. So he says he wants a title shot, he'll get a title shot.
That's
Hopefully
not.
Nagano will crush him.
They haven't announced his first fight. I thought that Jones already that it was already being decided or something.
They can't announce a heavyweight title fight till the heavyweight championship fight's over.
Okay.
They'll probably announce it in a post-fight press conference, but they got to wait till Miocic and Nagano is over before they
Okay.
can announce that.
I hadn't been following. I don't know, maybe a few months ago or something. There was a point at which Jones was saying he wanted to take a heavyweight fight before he went for the title, but I guess that's long past, and he's thrown that idea aside.
Yes, he
Yeah, we'll
wants
see.
to be a champion again. And Dana
Yep.
wants him to be a champion again. Dana likes him because if you sell tickets, Dana loves you. He doesn't care what you do. You could be an outright criminal, and if you sell tickets, you're okay with Dana.
Yep. That's how it is. So yeah, so we'll keep a lookout on the heavyweight division and what's gonna go on there. But yeah, congratulations to Lewis for that awesome win, and he might end up, if he gets another knockout or two, he's probably gonna be the number 1 knockout fighter in the UFC's history. So yeah, the other fight that I was saying right after that, for those who were streaming on ESPN, you could go straight over to the boxing fight between Oscar Valdez, who was actually not favored against Miguel Berchet. I always forget. There are 2 Mexican fighters for the in the junior lightweight division, WBC's junior lightweight division, and it was amazing fight. You guys got to watch it, but Valdez was just picking this guy apart. The weaving and the jabs were just so on point. But it got to the point where I'm not even sure which round. I think it was the 7th round. 5th or 6th round, Valdez had this guy dead on his feet. And he just did this knockout in the 7th or 8th round. He caught him off a right hook, I think it was. I'll send y'all the clip. But it was scary. Brochet went down and didn't wake up for a couple minutes. It was way scarier than any other fight in recent history. Like he looked like he was almost like dead on the floor, and there was a lot of concern. Like everybody's celebration just went down, and people were like really concerned for a while. But he got up. He was taken to the hospital afterwards. But yeah, this kid Oscar Valdez, who is a former Mexican Olympic athlete. Yeah, he won the title and it was pretty amazing. So check it out. Those Mexican fighters, man. I love them.
I like
Cool.
Teofimo Lopez,
Yep.
the lightweight champion of the world, undisputed, holds all the titles. and he's from
Yes.
Brooklyn.
Yep. Lopez is amazing. All right.
And
Cool.
because he beat Lomachenko, had one title, took Lomachenko's three titles, and he's from
Yes.
Brooklyn.
There's some. I'm excited about some of the new blood in the boxing world for sure too, because boxing was losing a lot of attention for a while, and so it's great to see it getting up in the rankings again. All right, cool. So I'm pulling up my info here. Let's get into UFC 259. So like we said, we have three title fights happening on March 6th. We have at the light heavyweight position, we have Israel Adesanya coming up and trying to challenge John Blachowicz. How do you say his name?
Blahovich.
Blachowicz.
Blahovich.
Blachowicz. For and he had Blachowicz just he hasn't defended the belt, right? Or
No, he just won it.
he just
He
got
was
the belt.
considered the underdog against Reyes
Yeah,
because Reyes had just fought Jones and lost a decision that most of us thought he won.
was a win. Yeah,
So Reyes was considered really hot stuff, and Blachowicz was considered a contender slash journeyman. I mean, he's been beaten by he's lost to Jimmy Manuwa, Corey Anderson, Alexander Gustafsson. Um, he was starched by Thiago Santos. So he was
yeah.
supposed to be meat for Reyes, and he came in and knocked Reyes
It was
cold.
It was amazing win too. And then we also have before we get into the fights, we have at the women's featherweight title, we have of course Amanda Nunes, one of the top female fighters in the world, against Megan Anderson, who is a really
The
dynamic fighter too.
biggest underdog of the card.
Yep. And then of course Peter Yan versus Aljamain Sterling, who's I mean, both of them are very exciting to fight to watch, but they have totally different fight styles, I think. But in any case, those are the three title fights, and there's a couple cool undercards that we'll go into. But let's start tackling which one you want to start with: bantamweight, women's featherweight, light heavyweight. Where we want to go first?
No, let's start at the top.
All right, cool. So the light heavyweight title. So this is most notable because you have Israel, who is a champion, coming up in weight to light heavyweight, and trying to become a double champion. Joining the ranks of Nunez and McGregor and all that kind of stuff, and two belt holders in the UFC. How do we feel about this fight? What's some thoughts?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, Adesanya is the middleweight, 185-pound champion, but he's 6'4", and what he's going to do is quite interesting. I'd like to see more fighters do this more often. He's going to fight at his walking around weight. He's not gaining weight. He's not losing weight. He walks around at 205, and he's going to be fighting at his walking around weight. So it should be, like a natural, easy weight for him. And of course, he's an incredible, incredible stylist. And kind of crazy story. He's born in Nigeria. After a few months in Ghana, he was 10 years old when he moved to New Zealand. And he got bullied a bunch in school. And then he saw the Ong Bak movies, and that inspired him to become a kickboxer. And he says, it was the Ong Bak movies. And he was 18 when he started kickboxing. He put together a 32-0 amateur record and a 75-5 pro record. And then at 21, he moved to Auckland and got into mixed martial arts. And of course, he's 20-0 with 15 knockouts in MMA. And it is interesting, though, that his last kickboxing match, he was knocked out with a left hook. And of course, Blachowicz has a nice left hook. But he's got a hell of a record, and he's this crazy stylist. He does these weird moves. He's an anime freak. That's why he's the last style bender from the last airbender. But I mean, right down, he says when he retires, he's going to start his own anime production company. That's what he wants to do with his life when he's done fighting.
It's fun.
And also, some of the moves come from at the same time that he was getting into kickboxing and first getting into this. He was winning dance contests all over New Zealand. So he's also a dancer, which has something to do with his movements. And everything looks good about him except his fight with Romero. Now remember his fight with Romero, they walked around and looked at each other for the whole 5 rounds, and that was it. He maybe threw a couple of punches and Romero threw none, or he threw four and Romero threw two, whatever. But they didn't do much of anything, but he got the decision anyway. But that's the only thing you can point to his record is being down. And like I said, he is 6'4". He isn't like a little guy coming in there. He could put on weight and go heavyweight easy at 6'4". And this is his walking around weight. So he's really fast. He's really technical. He's really difficult to deal with for anybody. And so far, he's undefeated. And
and I would add, he's really intelligent on his defense. His defense, especially his stand-up defense, I mean, really, really intelligent stand-up defense.
And he's just 31. So he's at his prime. Blachowicz is 37 and 6'2", 27 and 8.
He got that Polish power. Ah.
Well, he's only got 8 KOs
Yeah.
and 9 submissions. So basically, he's an overall fighter. And interestingly enough, his first martial art was he started training in judo when he was 9 years old. So he's actually basically a judoka who can punch. His right knee's been reconstructed. So I would expect Adesanya to go after that because right knee's been completely rebuilt. He's been beaten by Jimmy Manuwa, Corey Anderson, Alexander Gustafsson, was starched by Thiago Santos. But he's beaten Jared Cannonier. He came back and beat Jimmy Manuwa in a rematch. He's beat Nikita Krylov. He's beat Luke Rockhold. He's beat Jacare Souza. He came back and beat Corey Anderson in the rematch. And then he knocked out Dominic Reyes to get this title. So he's got a pretty good, outstanding record, even though he's just 27 and 8. He's been on a tear and doing really well. And, of course, it's a natural light heavyweight in today's idea of natural. As in Adesanya will be fighting his walking around weight, Blachowicz will probably be losing at least 20 pounds to get down to 205. So he'll be the bigger man.
I think Blachowicz's walking around weight is closer to like 230. So it's like significant.
Yeah, so he'll be the bigger man. He'll be the more experienced man. He's got the left hook. This fight could go any way. It should be very interesting with the solid, older, heavy punching, basic style, good grappling background fighter taking on this young wizard who does stuff no one's ever seen before, who does just crazy, crazy moves that no one's seen before. It should be a really, really interesting and fun fight to watch.
Yeah, and also too, Israel doesn't have much. He hasn't shown much in the UFC, especially in terms of grappling game. He is like more of a traditional kind of like kickboxer, but his takedown defense is amazing. I think it's somewhere like 90% takedown defense. But Blachowicz has pretty good takedown capabilities. We talk about that judo background, but he's pretty accurate with his takedown. So I mean, that's gonna be pretty interesting. But I think too, what do we think about when there's such a significant difference in like the build of somebody? Obviously, one's faster, and the other probably hits a little bit harder. But how do you think it plays out?
Well, again, speed kills, so the speed guy can often win. But as we saw with Derek Lewis, raw power can do some terrible things. So I would imagine if it goes to a decision that Adesanya's got it. But if somebody gets knocked out, it could go either way because they both hit hard. They both have, Adesanya's got a lot more knockouts. So it could go either way. And if it's a submission, it's going to be Blachowicz. So it'll all depend on where the fight plays out. If it's played out on the ground, Blachowicz will have a better chance of going for a submission. Like we said, he's been doing judo since he was 9 years old. And also, judo throws are a whole different thing than wrestling takedowns. So, because you can stop a wrestling takedown, you can still get caught with a judo throw.
Well, especially a
On the
judo
other
throw
hand-
by a big guy versus someone who's going to be significantly smaller.
Yeah, on the other hand, Adesanya is like a snake. He really is. He's got this wiggle thing going that's just really hard to figure out. So I really wouldn't want to pick anyone in this one. I just want to wait and watch the fun and see who wins.
Frank, do you think that? Okay, so I was just trying to pull it up, but I failed. The Adesanya fight where he fought the Cuban wrestler knockout artist. What's that guy's name again?
Well, it's Romero. That's the one I
Romero.
said is the one bad mark on his UFC thing, because that fight was a stinker. It was hard to stay awake.
Right. But
Literally.
what I'm
For
thinking.
an old guy late at night, it was literally hard to stay awake.
Yeah. No, I saw the fight. It was certainly not an entertaining fight, but I think that Adesanya basically said, like, essentially he took the strategy, like he took a strategy and he won the fight. He was fighting somebody who was an incredible takedown artist and an incredible knockout artist, but didn't want to engage. You know, he was trying to save his cardio, you know, right? That was the thing for him as a fighter, was that he always wanted to do as little as possible and then explode to destroy the other person. So it actually made it difficult for Adesanya as a striker. He couldn't really get into the counter striking game easily with the guy. So, I mean, but what I'm wondering is, do you think that is any indication of a possible way that this fight could go? Because if Blachowicz is more of a grappler and he has a significant knockout danger, then there is at least a little bit of correlation with that previous fight.
Probably a similar kind of strategy.
I think Blachowicz is basically more aggressive.
Okay.
And prouder. You know, he's not gonna. I don't think he'll want to do that kind of thing. Whereas Romero, if you look, would do anything to win.
Yes.
They had the time he got the extra 30 seconds on his stool when he'd been knocked out. There's another time when he was dazed and they poured water all over his head so it'd go all over the place. They'd get the extra time to clean up the water.
Right.
I mean, he was obviously a guy that do anything to win. And I don't think that's Blachowicz. I think Blachowicz is a really stand-up guy, and he's going to want to show his stuff. And I think he'll get in there and go after Adesanya.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I actually don't count that fight as that much of a negative against Adesanya. It was not a great fight to watch, but he basically, he was fighting against somebody who didn't want
got
to
the person
engage,
frustrated,
energy, and then wanted to explode. So it was like a super tactical, careful fight. But yeah, it was painful to watch.
Well, Romero's with Bellator now, so we'll see what happens over there.
Yeah, fuck Romero, but yeah. I don't like that. I don't like that dude.
No, I don't like him either.
No, I never did. Especially someone comes in preaching Christianity and then obviously would cheat his ass off.
Yeah.
The cheating soldier of God.
So I think it's gonna be. I agree. Blachowicz, I think I said it better, is favored. The odds are favored towards him.
Really? Okay.
Not by much, but yeah, he's favored. I mean, the champion is usually favored. In the even though they're both champions coming into this, but yeah, he's slightly favored. But I think it's going to be close, and I think like you're saying, it could go a couple different ways. I would love to see Israel taken down, though, and see what he's made of on the floor, and see how, well-rounded he is, because he might be more well-rounded. He says he is. He says he has a pretty good grappling game. No one can ever just get him down, though, and he just knocks everybody out. So we'll see. But that weight difference is going to be significant. We talked about this before the fight. I just mentioned it. We don't know how true it is, but a lot of media has talked about the dynamic of John Jones, who we were speaking about earlier. John Jones, who stepped away from the title before Reyes got it, and some people have said that Israel is kind of like dodging John Jones. Waited till he wasn't around in the division before coming up to try to do a title fight in the division. But then there's other, like Frank, you were mentioning, other instances where Israel says that he'll fight John Jones at any point. I think that would be a big moneymaker for UFC. So I think they would want to make that happen eventually. Like, say, for instance, Israel does win and has that title. I could foresee John Jones trying to come back and try to take that title from Israel.
I don't think Jones can make light heavyweight anymore. And that's one of the problems he had with his last two fights, which he almost got beat by a guy whose knees were gone after the first round. And then some of us think he did get beat by Reyes, who just got starched by Blachowicz. And it probably, a lot of it had to do with, I don't think he can make 205 anymore. He's a big man. And I don't think he has any intentions of trying to make 205 because he's been putting on weight. It's been the basic thing he's been doing to get ready for the heavyweights, is lifting weights and doing weight gaining, muscle gaining program. Last I saw, he was up to 250 solid. And I don't think he can make light heavyweight anymore. If they fight, Adesanya is going to go up to heavyweight, and hopefully he'll get a nutritionist and a trainer that will put weight on him too. I hope he doesn't go up to heavyweight as walking around at 205. But if they fight, it'll be at heavyweight. But I think Jones right now is focused on, and as I said, Dana undoubtedly will give it to him, the winner of Miocic and Nagano.
Well, I think that if Jones, especially if he loses in spectacular fashion, will either retire or he will be back to light heavyweight. I don't think that if he gets starched, he ain't sticking around. If he fights a competitive fight but still loses, maybe he'll keep in the game. But this is an interesting question to me because both of you know that I actually stood right next to Jones and actually was like, shouldn't you be bigger? Like, I guess he's 2 inches taller than me, but he did not look that much bigger than me as a person. And I typically walk around at 186.
But John, you're pretty tall though. You're a big dude.
Yeah, but I mean, again, like at one point, Shawn was actually training me for gaining weight, and I got up to something like 210 or so. But as soon as I stopped that program, the weight just fell off me, and I'm back at like 186. So
but I wish I could give you some.
Come on, Frank. But only the muscle, okay? You don't. What is it? I mean, it probably depends a bit on Jones's metabolism and everything. I would imagine if he's, he structurally looks. I mean, he's obviously more muscular than me because he's trained for it. But I kind of feel like he actually is structurally very similar to me. And if he has that type of metabolism, I think he'll be able to go up and then just be able to go back down again. I could, but I'm not an expert in this stuff, so I don't know.
You seen any recent pictures of him?
No, I have not.
You check him out.
Okay.
So the question is, if Israel does win though, who would be like a follow-up fight for that? And does he go back down in weight to middleweight? Is he going like a yo-yo back and forth? How do you think he goes if he gets 2 belts?
I think he wants to try and hold 2 belts the way Amanda Nunes has done. He wants to go back and forth, the same way that Ryan, what's his name, in the Bellator was light heavyweight and heavyweight champion for a while, going back and forth. Yes, thank you. um, back and forth. I've heard him say that's what he wants to do. He wants to defend 2 belts, and I'm sure that Reyes will be back. As you know, he was really hot stuff until basically just ran into a punch from Blachowicz. So and Blachowicz could want a rematch. I mean,
Whitaker,
there's
maybe.
Whitaker conceivably could come up there. Um, Souza, Jacare's always hot stuff.
Yep.
Hopefully not Rockhold. I hope he's done.
Yeah. Me
Corey
too.
Anderson. Corey Anderson's, has his
Till
hot
is
and
kind of
cold
up and
stuff, but he's
coming.
good. Oh, Till's going up to light heavyweight.
No. I'm saying if they were doing in the middleweight.
Oh yeah. Till could be a good. Till probably will get a middleweight shot. And
Yeah, I
Till's
like Till.
interesting fellow. Um, he's amusing.
Okay. So there's a lot of options for
But
Israel for sure if he gets those 2 belts. But if I'm gonna get it wrong all the way until fight night.
Blachowicz,
Blachowicz wins. He really starts cementing himself as, like a really. I mean, this will be his first defense of the belt, but his first defense against another champion that will really skyrocket his career. I mean, make him, get up there in terms of respect.
Well, I would imagine if he wins, and actually another person we didn't mention for Adesanya if he wins is Santos. If Santos comes back and looks good on the 6th, he's really hot.
Yeah,
He's really
Santos is
hot, and
fighting the same night. Yeah.
he's already knocked out Blachowicz. So I would imagine that if Blachowicz wins, Santos will be right up there
I mean, Santos is
for an
already
up
number
and coming
2.
fight.
Yeah, he's ranked number 2. So Santos probably
So
will.
so I would imagine that he'll be, if he looks good on the 6th, he'll definitely be in line probably next. I like him.
Yeah, can you remind us what he did in that fight against Jones?
Well, like I said, it later came out that he had had connective tissue badly injured, maybe torn in round number 1. And he kept coming after Jones, kept Jones on his back leg, kept Jones fighting defensively for the whole 5 rounds. And Jones did land more counter shots than Thiago landed, but he was the aggressor. He was after him. He kept at him. And it turned out that he did it for 4 rounds on knees that most guys would have quit on or fallen down on. And he had Jones on his back foot for 4 rounds with 2 wrecked knees. I mean, they were both surgically repaired after that fight from injuries in the first round. That's why I was really disappointed when Teixeira managed to choke him out. And then Teixeira choked out Santos. He's got to be right up there also.
He's number 1 rank. Yeah, he's number 1 rank. So he's definitely in the mix too for the next fight. Yeah, I mean, and Santos is kind of a knockout fighter, right? It's a lot of KOs and all that kind of stuff. That's his thing.
Well, it's not for nothing they call him the Hammer. And
Yeah,
he has a sledgehammer
big ass
tattooed
hammer
on
on
his
his
chest and abdomen.
Yeah. So that's it. A lot of exciting potential fights for sure. There's some good competition up there. Any final thoughts on that one? You don't want to make a pick? You don't have anyone that you're going with? John, what do you think?
Not.
You making a pick on that one, or are you staying neutral too?
I mean, I think Adesanya. I mean, for one thing, I always tend to pick for the smaller guys, sort of like root for the smaller person, but also for the Adesanya's striking is great to watch and everything, and and we've already seen that he has the intelligence to fight a very strategic fight. Even if it is not the fight the fans want to see, he can win a fight with a strategy that maybe is not entertaining, but it wins. So I think Adesanya will probably win.
Yeah, I might favor that, but I'm going for Blachowicz.
Yeah.
Am I saying it?
Blachowicz.
Just because, yeah, I think he's a very skilled fighter. I should probably learn how to pronounce his name better because I like him so much. I think he's really,
By the way,
really
it's
skilled. I was
It's
so
not Jan, it's Jan.
Jan. I was so impressed by his win against Reyes, and I just would love to see him get some more respect. I know he's slightly favored because he's the champion, but I think he's the underdog actually in many people's minds. And so I always root for the underdog. So I'm hoping that he wins this one.
As far as being favored, it's a week and a half away. You never know what happens with the late money. There's things in Vegas that people coming in the day of the fight and changing the odds completely. And I guess it will depend on who wants to bet more, the Polacks or the Africans. And also we haven't mentioned that Kamaru Usman is the welterweight champion and is becoming a huge star at welterweight. And in fact I think he has eclipsed St. Pierre for most wins in a row, although he's got quite a ways to go before he gets close to St. Pierre's title defense record because he hasn't had the title that long. But he's a really up-and-coming star, but it's quite interesting. He has stated that he will never, ever, ever fight Adesanya. And it's just because he loves the fact that the UFC has 2 African champions.
Yeah.
And he would never do anything personally to change that. So as long as Adesanya is a champion, he will never fight another African champion. If he wasn't a champion, that's something else. But he loves the fact there are 2 African champions. I find that commendable. I also find it commendable that he broke the Big Mouth's jaw, and the Big Mouth's back there running his mouth again.
Well, the Big Mouth, Covington is ranked number 1 in the welterweight division. It's ridiculous that he's ranked number 1.
Yeah.
So I think they're trying to do that rematch for sure.
It's another one that Dana loves him.
Yep.
They're both Trumpies, and they both shook hands with the big Trump, and Dana loves him, so he gets to be number 1, even though he's had his shot at Usman, and Usman not only beat him, but he broke his jaw. And
I would love to see the rematch and see another break of the jaw.
Yeah, absolutely. But it looks like he's going to rematch Masvidal instead, because there's no
Masvidal is the big discussion. Yeah.
There was no question that he beat the Big Mouth, that he broke his jaw and just beat him up.
Right.
Whereas Masvidal, he beat him up, but Masvidal, being who he is, came in on short notice. And it only had like 2 or 3 weeks to train. So it's all been, what if Masvidal had a full camp? And Usman got sick of hearing it and said, well, let's give him a full camp and give him the next shot. Usman said that. He's the one that came up with it. I love him. Okay, he thinks he was because he didn't have a full camp. Let's give him a full camp and do it again. So that should be a good fight. But he won't go near Adesanya because he doesn't like fellow African champions fighting each other.
Well, and Frank, also, depending on how the heavyweight fight goes, you could have 3 African champs, right? Yes. Which is it's a very interesting thing. I mean, to me at least, I don't know the landscape of sports so much. I know a little bit more of the history of mixed martial arts. But I mean, if it's 3 African champs, I think it's kind of unique in sports, isn't it? Like it's really a significant thing for sports overall, which is pretty interesting. And for mixed martial arts, it's very interesting too, because realistically, mixed martial arts has been dominated by North Americans and Brazilians, but it's overall been dominated by the Americas. And seeing people like having a significant shift like that, how long-term that shift is another question. But it's pretty cool to see for sort of the sense of the worldliness, like the being a world sport. It's pretty cool to see 3 champs from Africa.
Yeah, I think it'd be very cool.
Or potentially 3. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. All right,
Good
so we'll see.
there.
We'll see how that one plays out. Let's go into the next one, though. So we go into the women's featherweight division. And, of course, we have one of the super champs, Amanda Nunes, fighting the up-and-comer or not even uppercomer. She's pretty well established now, but definitely the biggest underdog, like Frank mentioned of the night, Megan Anderson. And I've actually seen a lot of Megan Anderson's fights, and really really impressed by how she gets down. But and also too, I follow her on social media, and she's a pretty cool person. So, but I love to hear people's thoughts. I mean, people are arguing that Nunez is finally like a legit women's champion that will hold the title for a very long time and is unbeatable and all these kind of things. How do you feel about it all?
Legit women's champion. She has undoubtedly made herself the number one woman mixed martial artist in history.
Right, but the
No
argument has been for
question.
a long time because women's divisions came into the game a little bit later, that a lot of the competition was not strong. I think that has shifted. Of course, people are finally realizing that is not true, but there is still a lot of sexism when it comes to female champions and
Well,
legitimacy and all that kind
well,
of stuff. So I think it's
she's not fighting men.
yep.
She's the women's greatest champion of all times. And there's no doubt about that. She's the bantamweight and featherweight champion, and in the process, she has beaten every other bantamweight and featherweight champion the UFC has ever had. She's beaten them all. She beat Ronda Rousey. She beat Misha Tate. She beat Holly Holmes.
The cyborg.
She beat Jermaine Radamine twice, and she knocked out Cyborg.
Wow.
I mean, every champion they have ever had in those two weight classes, she has beaten them. She got off to a slow start. I mean, she is 20 wins and 4 losses. Her wins are 13 KOs, 3 submissions, and 4 decisions. Her losses were 2 KOs and 1 submission and 1 decision, but those were all early on, really early on. And the only significant people she lost to Alexa Davis really on, and she lost to Kat Zagano, who when Kat Zagano's on, I'm surprised Zagano never won a title. I really like Kat Zagano. And talk about coming back from adversity. I mean, no one has come back from adversity like Kat Zagano did. And come back and start winning again and being a major feature in women's mixed martial arts. And of course, she's at Bellator now. So we'll see what happens. But Kat Zagano beat Amanda Nunes early on. But I mean, the first women's featherweight champion in Bellator was Julia Budd. And there's a whole talk about how Julia Budd was good. Well, fairly early on, Julia Budd fought Amanda Nunes. Amanda knocked her out in 14 seconds flat. 14 seconds to knock out Julia Budd. She's beaten Shayna Baszler, Sarah McMahon. She's beaten Shevchenko, and that's no small feat. Shevchenko is great. In fact, I think the only
Love her.
person that might give her, that was a distance fight. And I think the only person that could give her a run for her money out there now would be Shevchenko.
Mm-hmm.
She beat Raquel Pennington, and then she beat all those champions. She's just beaten everyone. There is talk of her as the number one woman's prize fighter in history, and I would dispute that. Absolutely. I think the number one women's prize fighter in history, no doubt about it, is Lucia Riker. I don't think anyone's going to outdo Lucia Riker. Lucia was a Dutch kickboxer who went 35 wins, 1 draw, 25 KOs as a kickboxer. There was 1 loss, but most of us don't count that 1 loss because it wasn't to a woman. The only fight she ever lost, she was fighting a Thai man. And of course, he said, you talk about incentive. He said, if I lost that fight, I could never go home. But that's the only loss she has ever had. And it doesn't count. It was a man. So 35 wins, 1 draw, and 25 KOs as a kickboxer. And then she came to the States and started boxing and went 17-0 with 14 KOs as a boxer. And I think undoubtedly Lucia Riker is the number one women's prize fighter in history. But right behind her comes Amanda Nunes. And if she keeps fighting, who knows? But of course, the fact that she has those 4 early losses goes against her when you're going to compare her to Lucia Riker, who was just amazing, amazing fighter. But yeah, Amanda Nunez, I said, the only
And
person out there I think that could stand with her is Valentina Shevchenko, and I don't think Megan Anderson stands a chance.
well,
I mean, she
Nunez,
is.
I mean, is also, I mean, she's known for recently doing all these knockouts, but she is also a black belt in jiu-jitsu, a brown or black belt in judo,
Mhm.
high level grappler. It just she knocks everybody out. She doesn't really need to take them to the floor per se. And so you think Megan has no no
No,
chance in this?
she she's 6 feet tall. So that makes
She's
her look
bigger.
good.
She's a
She's
bigger
6 feet
athlete.
tall. Yeah, she's 6 feet tall. She's 11-4. Uh, she lost a
She has a
decision to Holly.
pretty big reach advantage, I think too.
She lost a decision to Holly Holm. She's got a win over Kat Zagano, but I saw that fight. It's one of the weirdest wins I ever saw in my life, and it should have definitely been a no contest, period. Because what happened was she kicked Kat in the face, a grazing kick, and her toenail sliced one of Kat's eyeballs. It's really, I thought it should have been a no contest, but they gave it to her. But I've never seen anything like that, period. And it tells me that her toenails weren't cut the way they should have been. So that alone should have made it a no contest, if not a disqualification. Because if they were cut properly, that never should have happened. But her toenail sliced Kat's eyeball, and that's how she got her win against Kat Zagano. And I was looking through her record, and a loss to Holly Holmes and that win over Kat Zagano, the only recognizable people I saw in it.
Well,
You know,
Spencer, she lost to
she said,
Spencer. Spencer's pretty good.
I never heard of it. So
Oh.
as I said, there's no one else that that I had ever heard of on her record. She did win an Invicta featherweight championship, but Invicta's got a lot of women I never heard of, and I expect Amanda to blow through her like she's been doing. Um, definitely, Amanda wins this one. I can't imagine her losing. It'd be, a huge upset if she lost. And upsets do happen. It's prize fighting. Anything can happen in prize fighting. You never know. Who knows? Maybe Megan gets in the lucky shot and takes her out. Anything can happen, but I would be very, very surprised if Amanda doesn't take this.
Yeah, the odds are so heavily favored towards Nunez. So if someone's trying to make some money, take a chance. Put some money on Anderson because you'll get a big payout, but it's probably not going to happen.
Yep.
I mean, the advantages she does have. I mean, to play devil's advocate, she has a bit of a reach advantage. She has a little bit of a size advantage. She's only, not that the belt color matters, but she's only a purple belt, I think, in jiu-jitsu versus a black belt in jiu-jitsu and judo. She does though have some of her wins do come from submission. But yeah, I
Three.
think too. Yeah, I
Three.
think the I think the she has a little bit of a following, a little bit of a kind of like fan base kind of thing, and I think that's basically how she's getting this fight, because she's a little bit of a known kind of personality on social media and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't think it's gonna work out for her. John, you got
I
any
think that
thoughts?
I, honestly, I don't have too much thoughts. I know Nunez. I don't really know this other woman that she's fighting, and I think that, I mean, I would almost go so far as to say I don't think it'll get out of the first round.
I mean, she got the fight because she's number one, she's an Invicta champion, and number two, who else is there? Amanda's beaten everyone else out there. I would not be surprised to see Amanda clean out this fight and retire. Because who else is she going to fight? She's beaten everyone there is to beat. It sounds like she's getting ready to settle down with her wife.
Uh,
You know, they got a new baby or a baby on the way or whatever, and they're really, really into each other. Because the wife's a fighter also, Nina Ernsthoff. Um, and it sounds to me like she may be just about ready to retire because she has accomplished everything she set out to accomplish. And I don't see anyone, as I said, Shevchenko is the one person that could give her a
That's
run
what I was
for her
gonna say.
money.
I Valentina, she is on a win streak, and I think and she's number one ranked. Um,
Well, she's
and
the
what
champion of the weight class below.
right? So I think
Flyweight
they
champion.
yeah I think that would be a rematch that probably is gonna happen. It should happen. It would be if Nunez is open to it. That would be awesome. I think that fight. I think that's the only person though. I think that really is the only one right now who is
And she's
worth building
and
around.
she's already beat her, so she doesn't have to. It's not like
She doesn't
somebody
have
that
to
you're
know.
ducking or whatnot. She's already beat her. She doesn't have to fight her. So, if she's got an urge to fight again, Shevchenko's the one. But
What's the weight for women's flyweight? Like what's the range? Like
flyweight's
would Amanda go
120.
down to flyweight and take all three belts, or
No,
take
I
all
don't
those
see
belts?
Amanda going down to 125.
Oh, it's 125. Yeah, yeah.
And Shevchenko started at 135 and then went down to 125. So no problem for her to go back up to 135. When they fought, it was 135. Shevchenko spent a lot of her career at 135.
All right.
So onward to the men's bantamweight
Yeah.
title,
Exactly. So
where
this
this
one,
one
yeah,
could be competitive.
yeah,
This one could be competitive. I like both these guys. They're
yes.
good. Of course, I
Different
know
games though.
Yeah, I know John really likes Peter Yan,
Yep.
and Peter Yan, bantamweight, 28, 5'7.5", 16 wins, one loss. The one loss was a split decision. Um, Interesting background. His mother's Russian. His father is Chinese and Russian.
Oh, okay.
So that's where the Yan name comes from. Where he obviously takes after his mother in looks, but he's actually a quarter Chinese,
Hmm.
which is interesting. He started with Taekwondo in the sixth grade, and he was such a street fighter that his family had to keep moving from neighborhood to neighborhood to neighborhood because he'd get in trouble and they'd change neighborhoods to get him to quit fighting these guys over and over again. It just happened again, And then, but eventually he pulled it together, went to college. He's got a degree in physical culture and sport, and he's got wins over Johnny Magic Dotson, Jimmy Rivera, Uriah Faber, and of course he beat Jose Aldo for the title.
Yep.
And personally, I think he's absolutely correct when he says Henry Cejudo ducked him. Because just when he was getting to be the number one contender, Cejudo's like, I'm done. I've done everything I can
Hmm.
do. I'm the greatest in the world. I'll be the greatest forever. Goodbye. It's like, so I think he's correct that Cejudo ducked him. And he's quite a guy.
Oh
Now,
man,
Algerman's,
his fists are super fast. I love watching
yeah,
him fight.
yeah,
He
me
is
too.
super
He's
accurate and
a,
fast.
yeah, it's a really good fighter. He's really fun to watch. Aljamain Sterling's a really solid fighter. And he's
And he's
from
from New
Long
York.
Island.
He's from New York. Yeah.
Yes, he's from Long Island. And, exactly. And he's Jamaican descent. One of those wild and crazy Jamaican families. Like they say, he's got 7 siblings. And I love this statement on Wikipedia. At least 12 and a half siblings. It's like they
Oh
don't
boy,
know, but at least 12 and a half siblings
that's
and
that
7
island life.
siblings. So, absolutely. And he managed to go to college and get a degree also. So coming out of, had to be fairly rough with that family. And he's got a physical education degree. And I'm not sure what division. I don't think it was Division One, but he's also was an NCAA wrestling champion with a college wrestling record of 87 wins and 27 losses. And amateur MMA, he was 6-1, and then he went pro. As a pro, he's 19-3, 2 KOs, 8 submissions, 9 decisions, and the 3 losses, 1 KO and 2 decisions. He lost a split decision to Brian Caraway. That's too bad. God, I don't like Caraway. And he lost a split decision to Rafael Asuncio. And then Marlon Moraes KO'd him. Of course, when Moraes is hot, he can KO anybody. And Moraes caught him. On the other hand, he's got a unanimous decision over Henan Barao. He's got a submission over Cody Stamen. He's got a unanimous decision over Jimmy Rivera. And he submitted Corey Sandhagen to get this fight with Peter Yan. And when he started training, because of his wrestling career, I'm sure they knew each other from college, he was actually invited by John Jones when John Jones had his own upstate club called the Bomb Squad. And that's where he started training. But then I don't know if Jones closed it when he went to Jackson or Jackson Winklejohn in New Mexico, or whether Algerman just realized he wasn't getting the attention because those big star gyms tend to mostly pay attention to big star, period. And so he went back to Long Island and joined the Sarah Longo fight team. And I like the Sarah Longo fight team. They've turned out some good fighters, and they're from Long Island. And Matt Serra has obviously become a much nicer guy than he was when he was Renzo Gracie's assistant, which was sort of secondhand there. My boy Roy trained there. Said Serra was quite the bully back in those days.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But
Sarah is the co-host of the UFC's podcast. And yeah, he definitely presents himself as a nice guy there. So, and he's bringing up some pretty good fighters. So maybe he seems to be.
Yeah, it's, people get older, people mellow out. People say I'm nicer.
But Aljamain, though,
really know him. Oh.
Aljamain's submissions, though, I mean, like, have you seen these things? They're like vicious submissions. I really love his submission capabilities. He
Sarah's a good submission guy.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
They said he was
that's how it plays out.
Top guy out of Renzo Gracie, New York.
Yeah. But Aljamain is labeled as a kickboxer, but he has these pretty significant submission wins, and he has that wrestling background.
Well, Tony Longo is a great kickboxing coach. They got a good coaching staff out there with the two of them. They've got both aspects covered by having Sarah and Longo. And they seem to be really good trainers. They seem to get along well with their boys. Like I said, Sarah seems to have turned into a nice guy. People do that when they get older sometimes. And, Aljamain Sterling seems to be a nice, solid fighting, good kid.
Yep. And he's on a five win winning streak. And actually, even though he's not he's facing against Peter, who's the champion, Peter is slightly favored. It's not even a big favor. Of course, that might change, but they're the same height, they're the same weight. Sterling has a significant reach advantage, longer arms. But the thing is, Peter's takedown defense is stellar. Like one of the best takedown defenses right now in the UFC. John, I know you love Peter. What do you think?
Well, I mean, so I'm picking Peter, and first of all, I mean, this is like a complete bias in MMA, but I kind of hate grapplers who either basically grind out decisions. I mean, if you have two grapplers who are really hot, like you can see a really good, interesting match, but I'm not a fan of because he already on social media, I'm sure that maybe I don't know if you saw it, Shawn. Probably you didn't, Frank. But basically, he's taunting Jan and essentially pushing the wrestling thing that he's going to outwork him and grind him out, kind of a thing. And that's the last thing I want to see is somebody just grind out somebody else, especially somebody who I really like. So I think that Jan's going to just outstrike him, and ultimately, it probably won't be like a first round kind of thing, but maybe a third round. I think Jan will win. I think he will either get a TKO, probably a TKO, but
now it is a known strategy to go on social media and talk about doing something and talk about doing something and talk about doing something and show up and do something completely different.
Yes, agreed.
So there is that possibility. And I think Aljamain's a really, really good fighter, and I do like him. But I'm picking Jan also. I think, 16-1, the one's a split decision, comes from an equally tough background. We don't have a college, even though they have college degrees, it's not a college kid versus a street kid. It's a street kid versus a street kid. And anything could happen. But I think Jan's just got the little bit better credentials.
Jan's Siberian. Right? It's not even like, from the mean streets of, one of the big cities Moscow. Ask Anvar sometimes. Siberians, people that grow up in -50 is normal temperatures in winters there. There's some strong-willed people there.
Well, don't ask Anvar, ask Richard.
Well, I mean, we could ask Richard also, but
no, you may not get it. Richard grew up in Siberia. He moved to Moscow college years. Richard grew up in Siberia.
Oh, I didn't know that actually.
Yeah, I figured you did.
Yeah, I'll have to ask him. But for me, when I see people that are from that part of the world as fighters, especially, I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to be somebody who is like sort of a stony, cold, unbreakable will.
Yeah, I would pick Peter, but I expect a pretty good fight.
Well, what does Aljamain have to do to win? What would Sterling have to do to win?
Well, outside of a lucky shot, he's got to take him down and go for a submission. I don't think he can just keep him down. I don't think he can hold him down to grind it out. I think Peter's too good at getting back up. So I think he would have to take him down and get a submission in order to win. And I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, what he's notable for doing, too, is taking people's backs and hanging on their backs on backpack style. So not even going for a clear takedown, but just trying to, choke them out or do a arm triangle from the back kind of thing. And he's really strong. Sterling is super duper strong. So he could potentially do something like that. Yeah, no, definitely. But I could see, because if he can't get Jan down, I could see him trying to be slippery and try to get on Jan's back somehow, or push him on the cage and try to frustrate him. But it's going to be really hard to do. Jan is fast.
Really hard. By the way, while we're on the subject of these guys, one of the things I love about Matt Serra was the biggest upset in UFC history.
Oh, yeah.
Matt Serra. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was awesome.
He knocked out Georges St. Pierre with a spinning back fist and took his title. Now, in the rematch, Georges took it right back. But just you got this short, stocky guy who's noted for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, period. That's all he's noted for is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And he actually sucked Georges St. Pierre into getting close enough with those short arms that he knocked him out with a spinning back fist.
Yeah.
Plus, I love that technique. And, yeah.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that, check that out on YouTube, yeah.
One of the memorable moments of the UFC, Serra's knockout.
The other thing is...
But unfortunately, his guy's not going to do the same. His guy's not going to do the same thing.
Yeah. So, the other discussion is in that division, in the bantamweight division, You have Sterling is the number 1 contender, but then number 2 is Sanhagen. Sanhagen actually lost to Sterling a couple fights ago, but Sanhagen had a really, really significant win a couple weeks ago when he did that flying knee to Edgar and basically, I think, ended Edgar's career. Did you guys see that?
I didn't see the fight. I
No,
saw talk about it.
but
Yeah.
ended Edgar's career. Edgar was at the end of his career.
No, for sure.
I don't.
For sure.
I don't think
but
he. I think
the flying knee might have, ended him physically, I mean, in
I don't
that
think.
sense.
I don't think 5 years ago he would have stood a chance in hell against Frankie Edgar. Edgar's really long in the tooth for a little guy. Little
Yeah.
guys don't last as long as the big guys, and he's really been around a long time. And
He's a legend for
so
sure.
he got
Hall
sloppy.
of Famer.
So he got sloppy and was open to a flying knee, but that never would have happened in his prime.
But Sanhagen, I will, to his credit, is super slippery and fast. So I would love to see him get that. If Peter wins this, I would love to see Sanhagen maybe getting the title fight after that for Jan's next defense.
Well,
I'd
it probably will.
I'd be interested in
I
that.
don't know who else there is.
Yeah, that's true. It's not really a heavy division.
And the undercards aren't great, but it's got some okay fight. I mean, we got Thiago the Hammer Santos fighting somebody for the opening fight of the pay-per-view. And the main event of the prelims is Dominic Cruz making a comeback against somebody. But
Casey Kenny, whoever that is.
whoever that is, with but Dominic is so smart and so technical, and he's another little guy that's been around forever. But with him, it's all brains. It's all brains. I love him as an announcer because he is so smart and knows pretty much everything that's going on in
Yep.
mixed martial arts and can tell you any strategy and explain exactly what people are doing. He's a great announcer. But also because of that, you never know what he can pull off when they put him in against these somebodies. And
Well,
then
I
you
think
got,
what he's trying to do, he's trying to get back into the top 10 so that he can work towards getting towards that bantamweight title fight. But he is way down in the rankings right now, so I think he's just trying to build up to get there, right?
What was his last fight, Frank? Didn't he come back and it did not work out well for him? Like they
yeah.
had
I
him,
don't remember who, but I remember he lost his last fight.
but it was somebody you heard of, is the thing.
Yes.
It was a
Yeah,
hot
that's why he
fight.
gets to come back this time against who?
He lost
Right.
what's his name? Sejudo? What's his name?
Oh, okay. So he did fight against
Cejudo.
Okay.
Cejudo, yeah. It was Cejudo.
Oh, that's right. That was,
Mhm.
and then Cejudo retired.
Yep.
That's right. He beat Dominic Cruz, who's been around forever and had an off night, and then immediately retired before he had to fight Jan.
Mm-hmm.
With I'm the greatest fighter of all times of anything, and now I'm going to retire and be the greatest fighter of all times of anything. And he even toyed with the idea of being a boxer for a minute, but I think he got the idea that he wasn't going to maintain his greatest fighter of all times if he tried that.
Yeah, but so he lost to Cejudo, and that was early last year or like mid. That was like spring last year. But prior to that, he hadn't fought, since 2016.
Right, because he's had all these knee injuries. Right, it took him forever to come back. Like he kept getting fights and then getting re-injured. I mean,
his knee, his shoulder, he just got injuries left and right.
Right.
Which basically shows he's training too hard. When all those injuries were training injuries, not match injuries, that means they're going too hard in training.
And he's not that young.
And
I mean,
also
he's
on the
35
undercard,
already, so he's getting up there for a fighter.
So I said for a little guy, he's way up there.
Yep.
And it's just his brains that keeps him in it.
Frank,
because he's really, really smart.
Why is it that the little guys age not as well? I know that in in heavyweight, there's just not enough of them. So you get guys who are fighting much older and everything, and the competition is considered lower in general. But is it the pace at which the smaller guys fight that just takes it out of them more over the long run, or what?
Just the smaller bodies tend to wear out faster because it's transferred into MMA, but it's an old boxing thing that the lighter weight boxers burn out and the heavyweight boxers hang in there, or you have heavyweight boxers that don't even start to peak until their mid 30s when all the little guys are pretty much done. It's you've got your Jersey Joe Walcotts and your Archie Moores and your Sonny Listons and people that don't peak until they're really getting older.
This
And that never happens with the little guys.
this
It
must
just
have
doesn't.
something to do with the competition and the training for competition, though, because I've always heard that larger bodies and especially taller bodies like mine tend to age more poorly, like more back problems, more, all sorts of problems. So that's an interesting thing. It's that's why I was kind of like, oh, that's confusing. But
Well, with fighters, it just has always been that way. The older guys, the bigger they are, the better they hang in there for a long career. George Foreman, etc.
okay.
So, and I
Yeah.
don't know why, but it's just been that way ever since the history of boxing.
And then we also
And
got
then
in the prelim. We got the Chinese guy, right? What's his?
yeah, three dong something or other. Um, well, san is three in Chinese, and it's san dong, but
It's,
the Kung Fu Monkey, three dong, whatever the Kung Fu Monkey is supposed to be
he's
really
got all sorts of
entertaining.
good names. Three Dong Kung Fu Monkey.
But he's supposed to be a really, really entertaining fighter. Supposed to be really entertaining. So he could be fun to watch.
Yeah.
And
It'd be good to see. I know China. We have a Chinese champion, obviously, a women's champion, but I know the Chinese fighters have been
oh,
trying
she's
to
a
really.
beast.
Yeah, she's my favorite. But we have a couple
Yeah.
other. I think China's really trying to get some more champions and build up some fighters. So it'd be good to see if he's up and coming.
Yeah. Yeah, the Leech is on the rise at welterweight. He's like won his last couple very, very noticeably. And yeah, there's some Chinese fighters coming up there. And
Yeah,
then
I'm looking at the
on the
ranking.
fight,
Song, if Song wins, he might get into top 10 if he wins that fight pretty well.
wow, cool.
So he's
And do
getting
we
up
know
there.
what his base
And
is, Frank?
bantamweight.
No, but his base, like, is he
Sanda.
Sanda? That's what I figured. That's actually what I expect most of the Chinese fighter base to be.
Didn't you say he's from a beer town too, or something like that?
Except,
Harbin.
oh yeah, he's from Harbin. He's from Harbin, so he's from where it's cold and they have good beer. It's up in northeastern China.
And I'm pretty
That's
sure they're
that's
also,
around where
oh, go ahead.
that's around where Tina's mother's from.
Oh, cool.
Is up by Harbin. But yeah, it's cold up there, and then before they started having the craft beers, that was one of the beers that Jonathan and I wanted was Harbin beer.
Yeah.
It's good.
Harbin is also famous for their ice festival, I think. It's like the largest ice festival in Asia and possibly the largest in the world. Like, I mean, I've seen pictures of it and they build like huge. When you see it lit up at night, it almost looks like a city built out of ice. It's huge.
And incredible, incredible ice sculptures. This is really, really intricate. You couldn't imagine that they make them out of ice. Incredible ice sculptures. Yeah, their ice festival is #1 in the world for ice festivals.
Very cool. And then I know in the early prelims, you have Kai France, and I know Kai was like an up and coming, but he had a couple of significant losses in his past couple of losses, past couple of fights. But I know he's like Adesanya's guy. They're from the same camp and stuff. So I feel like his traveling buddy. Like, you better give my boy Kai a fight in the early prelims if I'm gonna be on the card, kind of thing. But I like it. I think he's a really dynamic fighter too. So I'd like to see him win and get back up in some rankings.
Yeah, in the early fight pass prelims, Tim Elliott's fighting too. And Tim's always an entertaining fighter. Win or lose, he's going to entertain you.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome.
So-
Well, it's gonna be
so they-
loaded. Yeah. Go ahead.
So they got another card that's worth the $70. It's like last month,
I think
Kara
so.
Usman versus Gilbert Burns was a great main event, but he looked underneath that and went, "Who? What?
Yeah.
Where?" And it just wasn't worth $70, even with that good main event. But they've got another one that's worth the $70.
I mean, 3 title fights, so that's 3 potential 5-round fights. That's pretty cool. It's definitely worth the money in my mind, especially if you split it with some buddies, right? We're gonna be splitting some costs, or splitting costs of beer or something like that. So yeah, it should be exciting. Just so I have it clear for the light heavyweight, John, you're going with Israel. I'm going for
Yes.
Jan. Frank is saying neutral.
Yes.
So
Could go
boring,
either
Frank.
way.
So boring. Take a risk, Frank. Take a risk. And then for featherweight, I think we all are in agreement that Amanda handles that pretty easily. It would be a tremendous upset if Megan wins. For the Peter and Aljamain, we have Frank. Who are you going for in that one? Peter, you said.
Peter.
John going for Peter.
Expect a good fight, but Peter.
Yeah, and I'm also same, Peter.
All right, I'll go for Aljamain. Just so that there's some something we could argue about the night of. There's also we forgot to also mention on the main card is that kid Islam Makachev. He's this guy's protege or up and comer. I don't know if he's a cousin or a friend. What's his name? What's the
Nuramagdan? I can't say his name. The Eagle.
Yeah.
Oh, Khabib.
Khabib.
Yes,
Yeah, he's Khabib's boy.
Nobody wants to say the
Nurmagomedov.
last name.
Nurmagomedov.
Okay.
Yes.
Which is really difficult because it's Nurmagomedov and then it's just Nurmagomedov and they're 2 different names. But he's Nurmagomedov.
Okay.
And he got on the main card, I think, because he's Khabib's boy, and there's arguments that he is just as good, up and coming. He's in the lightweight division. Have any thoughts on? He's fighting Drew Dober. You have any thoughts on that one?
Well, did he wrestle bears? If not, then he's not Khabib.
But yeah, supposedly him and Khabib are very, very tight training partners or whatever. So we'll see. And then we have Thiago Santos versus Alexander Rakic. So I think we all are in agreement that Thiago, he's probably the one that we're going for, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Seeing if he could get back up in there. All right, cool, awesome. So we'll probably have a follow-up show depending on how good this UFC is. UFC 259 happening on March 6th. Hopefully, we get some entertaining fights and we could do the follow-up show. But definitely, if you have any thoughts about who might win and where you see things going, drop it in the comment section. We love to hear what people are thinking about with all this. And as always, follow us on YouTube. Drop a subscription on, drop a review rather on iTunes, subscription on YouTube, and all those areas that you follow our podcast. And definitely check out our show notes so you can find out more details about what we have going on with the Wudang. We're almost in springtime, and I there's some rumor that there might be some outdoor classes popping up again in the next couple of weeks in New York City. So I know a lot of people are excited about that. Frank, you have any updates that you want to announce, or is it still in the works?
Well, it's still kind of in the works, but this time instead of just yard classes, they're going to be hybrid classes. In other words, live and Zoom.
So for those who have been taking advantage of it, virtually and still want to do so, they can maintain that.
Yes.
But then those who want some in-person training with some social distancing will have that option too.
Well, yep. That's really great too, just because if we do have weather, class can still happen just to, through the Zoom instead of outdoors. So that's
yes,
it's good.
It's good, especially for March. You never know with March.
Right.
It could be total, wonderful, warm, flower growing spring, and it could be resembling, yes, exactly.
Awesome.
One never knows about March.
Yes. All right. So we'll see y'all next week, and thanks for checking us out. We'll talk soon.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.